sorry.
Hello.
Frankie, you were stating 248. 248.
Well, I checked.
I bought one today too. I bought one today too.
I was gonna say I saw bags in stock yesterday. I guess they must have gotten more of the stickers in stock.
So
too.
exciting. Although my husband was like, well, it's too cold to put the sticker on tonight. It's too cold. We have to wait till it's warmer tomorrow, he said.
More stickers than we were expecting.
Is that
I
No, I think we the more stickers are sold, more Max stickers, more revenue.
I mean, we bought one because we want to experiment with our ability to throw away less trash before we do the bags, you know? So we're going to work on that in these 6 months, and then maybe we don't buy a sticker in 6 months, you know? So maybe other people will do that too, you know?
We're also experimenting in our household, and we thought that to experiment. But if you save money, there's not gonna save. So that's how we convinced yourself.
Well, my kids are also like teenagers, so I can't even. It's much harder to get them on board with things. So
My thought that was the opposite. I was like, well, I have to buy the Max Trash sticker as soon as possible. I don't even want to experiment with bags because I don't want to waste any of the Max Trash.
well, I guess we will see.
I know.
Exciting.
Ultimately, I decided it wasn't worth the emotional. And also, I feel. Oh, hey, really quickly, is there a permit to use them? There is. I don't even remember when anyone asked me that question, but now the answer is no.
Now, if his groups of 15 or less, we don't treat that as a group. But if it's just 15 people getting together.
Oh, shoot, I'm gonna go out there and have a jam session with my buddies.
Keep it at 14.
14. See, we go.
no, it's recording.
Oh, hey, good evening, everybody, and Happy New Year. This is okay. Well, good evening. This is the Greenbelt City Council work session. I'd like to call this this work session to order. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll for us, please?
Do we need to call the roll for a work session?
Yeah, we usually do.
No, we don't. We just introduce ourselves.
All right. Well, Emmett Jordan, serving as mayor.
Kristen Weaver, Mayor Pro Tem.
Jenny Poppy, council member.
Danielle McKinney, council member.
Amy Stoll, council member.
Frankie Fritz, council member.
Okay. And Councilmember Pope is on travel. I don't know if she's tuned in, but she should be with us in the next week or so. So before we begin, are there any information items to be shared at the end of the work session?
I have one.
Okay, we got two. Three. Okay. So these council work sessions, we hold them on Mondays or Wednesdays several times a month to exchange information with community stakeholders or to gather input from staff, advisory boards, residents. No formal votes or actions are taken during work sessions. Tonight's work session, as are all council meetings, open to the public except for those executive sessions that are authorized by state law Residents may observe our deliberations, and we'll pause periodically to provide opportunities for the public to comment. During those times, if you wish to speak, just if you're here in the room, just raise your hand. After being recognized, you can go to the podium. You need to state your name and where you live, more or less, in the city of Greenbelt. If you are on Zoom, use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen or raise your virtual hand. We don't accept anonymous comments on social media. And finally, if you're watching remotely on cable TV or on YouTube or Facebook, you can just send us an email. The email address is questions@greenbeltmd.gov. So with the public comment, please limit your remarks to 3 to 5 minutes during, actually 3 minutes during the work session, and address one topic under consideration. We ask to remain civil and avoid disparaging others or questioning the motives of other folks. We're all neighbors. So tonight we're addressing cellular phone coverage gaps in Greenbelt, an issue that's once again come up, and it's a priority. It's been a priority following several many residents' concerns that were raised late last year. And it's come up in the past, so it's all about the reliability and reach of our city's cell phone coverage. While carrier maps show near perfect coverage in Greenbelt, our neighbors report dropped calls and dead zones. So we need to move beyond these discrepancies and create a roadmap to address the reality of the cell phone coverage and begin to look at our city's digital infrastructure more broadly. So tonight we're actually focusing in on three priorities in the discussion. One has to do with mapping the reality versus what the carriers claim. We got Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T. They all report comprehensive coverage, but resident feedback tells a different story. We'll be talking a little bit about the city's assets and how we can map them out for future infrastructure hosting, looking at the possibility of using city-owned land or properties as potential sites for new antennas or towers, just the potential and figuring out which ones could be used. And finally, talking a little bit about our smart cities vision. Our city managers explored a few possibilities. We're kind of looking at some changes with the ownership of the light poles in the city of Greenbelt and the areas. And if that happens, then there's an opportunity to modernize some of our city operations and to come up with some new ways to work with lighting. We actually dim lighting and the wireless alternatives for systems and sensors. So tonight's the first step, looking at some of these infrastructure needs. And just as we do with the neighborhood, everybody has electricity. Everybody needs to have access to connectivity. So I do have to say I'm disappointed. I was hoping to actually get a representative from government relations from Verizon here tonight. So I made the request, and I look forward to hearing from them directly. Now, I was talking with the manager and Mayor Pro Tem, and we wanted to just initially open the floor up for any comments from the public before we start the discussion, just to hear what people are thinking. So I don't know, do you have, is anybody online right now?
No, but I'm also noting that the Zoom link doesn't appear to be on the city calendar, and it doesn't look like it's on the agenda. That's the page, the agenda page. When I just pulled it up, I didn't actually see the Zoom link there.
Okay. Well, the floor is open. Would anyone like to make a comment? I'm not seeing anyone rushing to the microphone. So let's go ahead and dive in. City Manager Summerone, how are you? Happy New Year once again.
Happy New Year, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Good evening, residents. I'm doing well, thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, Mr. Summerone, you've pulled together some information that's very helpful just in initiating this discussion. You've got some maps that you've been able to pull from the various carriers, and you've done some research as was requested by residents and council back in December. So let's go ahead, and if we can put those up on the screen, and if you want to talk about the research that you've been able to complete, Mr. Summerone, that would be a good place to start.
My pleasure, Mayor. So in your packet are two documents that I've included. One is the titled Map Materials for Council Work Session on Cell Phone Service in Greenbelt Center. So it starts off with a map. Are you able to share that screen. The first map is a map of cell towers that are in and around Greenbelt. So there are three categories that are highlighted here. It's the 5G millimeter wave, the extended GSM, and the GSM Edge, which are the LTE-4 networks. So as you can see from the map, that there's an abundance of towers around Greenbelt. The area that lacks coverage is Greenbelt Center, which is in line with the testimony or the complaints that we've heard from residents that Greenbelt Center has poor coverage. This is the map of the towers are not in line with what the coverage maps are showing by the three major carriers in the city, and that is Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T coverage map. All of them are claiming to have 4G and 5G coverage in not just Greenbelt Center, but all of Greenbelt. But the one that we,
Josue,
I'm
Mr.
sorry?
Summerall. So with the cell phone towers, you can see on the map there, there's red dots and the green dots. So that's 4G and 5G or light GMSA versus GSA, which are two technologies. Verizon is GSA, I believe, and GSMA is T-Mobile. I kind of looked at these things when I was switching cell phone service a while back. So I just wanted to, just in terms of how these cell phone towers are placed, if my memory serves me well, I think, you know, the city would be notified if a new tower is put into place. But we don't have, it's not like the franchise agreement that we have with Verizon and Comcast for cable service. It's a completely different thing, even though, you know, both companies are sort of competing in the same market for cell phones. Is that right?
that is on the franchise agreements. The franchise agreements only cover the cable providers. So that would be the franchise agreement you're talking about. We get not only notified of when their service changes, price changes, but we also get a percentage of all the revenue collected by the cable franchises. With the cell phone companies, there isn't any agreement similar to that with the municipality. So the cell phones are not required to let us know of any carrier modification, changes to connections or cost structure. They're not bound by those same regulations.
Right, and they really should be in some ways. These franchise agreements with the cable TV providers provide for the public access channels. If somebody's actually watching this on cable TV, it's because of the franchise agreement. So, and with the cellular service versus broadband service, you know, I guess Comcast and Verizon, they both provide those. So you can actually have phone service, broadband phone service, coming because Comcast offers phone service.
Right. They offer a phone service, but that's voice over IP
Right.
service. And now what I've started to see in my bill, I have Comcast, Xfinity. They also offer a mobile cell phone service.
Right.
Now that mobile service that Comcast and other providers like Mint Mobile, Clear Mobile, their actual the phone traffic goes through another provider's system. So Mint Mobile uses T-Mobile,
Yeah.
and there's Boost Mobile, and there's others, and they don't have their own towers. They're riding the networks of their other providers.
Right. So when you're outside with your cell phone, you're using that cell tower, cell information. But when you go inside, you're probably switching over to the voice over IP Wi-Fi.
In my particular case, my T-Mobile just allows me to use Wi-Fi as my cell phone signal once I'm in the home, but I'm still using my device.
Yeah. Same here. Any comments? Okay, let's roll.
Are you able to share the full screen? It's showing the agenda, the web page. Right. So the first map is just the map of the tower. So the T-Mobile does have two antennas in Greenbelt Center, and that's the yellow dot that you see there at the top of Ridge Road. That's the WSSC water tower. Are you able to make that full screen? So T-Mobile, this is one of the reasons why the city moved, why we moved our admin phones from Verizon over to T-Mobile, because we were struggling with signal in Greenbelt Center. We were struggling with cell phone signal here in this building. So we needed to make the change in order for us to be able to have use of our phones.
Ms. Alvarez, if you go to the far right, there's a presentation mode option, like in the right up, upper, okay, that works too. I was gonna say there is, there is an option from
Oh,
the
that's great.
agenda, from the agenda platform too, to be able to do a presentation mode.
Thank you. So that's the one. Next page. So the next page is the Verizon coverage. It's deep red. It shows that everyone in Greenbelt has access to 4G network. While Verizon is saying that what we're hearing from residents, that's not the case. There's dead spots that folks are reporting. Having been a Verizon user myself with their city phone, this was not the case. There are areas in the city where I didn't have service. The next slide, please. So the next is T-Mobile. T-Mobile showing 5G capacity everywhere in the city. That's more likely. I know myself, I've tested my phone, and I get a strong signal in this building. That's with the Wi-Fi off. T-Mobile, the AT&T also strong coverage. So I think that there's a discrepancy what we're finding on the service provider side and what our residents are reporting to us about their coverage of the three different companies.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, so I've also included the links directly to the service providers' coverage maps. So the map for Verizon, the map for T-Mobile, and the map for AT&T. The links are on that PowerPoint, and they're available to the public if folks wanna take a look at those maps. I've also included a map of the towers by service type. There's a URL there. I've also included in the packet, Mr. Mayor, 2 additional documents, and one is I think we have a real challenge here in the city that when you look at the map of cell towers around us, there's a saturation of towers around Greenbelt Center, but not in Greenbelt Center. And I think that's in line with some of the feedback we've heard from some of our residents at a couple council meetings ago, that the problem in the city is a lack of coverage, cell towers. And I think that's something that we should look at. And if we're to explore that possibility with the service providers, we should be prepared to make space available or offer sites that could be available for putting either antennas or cell towers. So I included 2 reports. One is a guy from one of the mini consultants around cell tower leases, and that provides sort of a guide how to go about registering sites with the carriers so that the carriers know that you're open to business, open to placing an antenna in either a building or land. And the guy also goes into how to evaluate lease proposals and negotiate lease proposals. This is only one of the many companies out there that provide this service. In my previous role in Ohio, I worked with American Tower and SBC, who were tower builders. They built cell phone towers, and the village had lease agreements with these 2 companies, and the town got paid for these lease agreements to have cell towers around the town. So that is an opportunity we can explore for the obvious reasons of making more cell towers, having more cell towers in Greenbelt Center, having a better connectivity. So that leads me to the second report, which is a report from T-Mobile. T-Mobile provided this presentation to Greenbelt in our 4 Cities Coalition at a 4 Cities meeting, because we were
About
talking.
2 years ago, right?
It was actually, this was July of 2024, when we were talking about the possibility of joining forces and acquiring all the streetlights and how we will go about controlling or managing the streetlights. So Pepco has a program, a model, a service model that they can connect all of these lights in a smart cities network so that we could control timing and dimming functions of the lights. They presented the additional services or modules that could be added onto streetlights, such as Wi-Fi repeaters, vehicle counts, light pollution or sound pollution. There are numerous other devices that can be added on to light fixtures, but it's depends. It relies on having an infrastructure, an IT infrastructure that connects all of these Internet of Things and devices. So that document or that presentation is directly from T-Mobile and talks about their smart cities concept and how it works. The reason I added this presentation to the packet is because as we think about cell phone service is we can't have we cannot have the conversation on its own because I think we need to talk about what's our long-term goals around information infrastructure, IT infrastructure for the city. Nowadays, it's essential to have strong broadband access and cell phone access because so much of our daily lives is dependent on our ability to connect to the world, connect to the larger market, connect to the world. Whether that's you need to attend a doctor's appointment via online, or you need to do schoolwork online or work online. So many of our workforce is now working from home or going to school from home. So strong broadband and cell phone signal is essential for doing the things that we do.
Yeah, it definitely is. Thanks for pulling this information together. You listed, there's just a stark discrepancy or difference between these coverage maps and the reality of cell phone service in Greenbelt. I was looking around. I found a site. It's called coveragemap.com, and it's actually a crowdsourced mapping of cell phone service, and it tells a completely different story. It actually tells a story, more or less, that we're hearing, that there are just spots, particularly in the north end, Plateau and Laurel Hill and Research, that just don't get good coverage, particularly with Verizon. Not so much, not to mention any names, not so much the other companies. But yeah, it's a real issue, and don't have quite as much information on Greenbelt East. Things have changed a bit since this issue came up a few years back, but the coverage on the other side of the Baltimore-Washington Parkway for Verizon was sorely lacking in the past. It seems to have gotten better. Maybe it's that cell tower that they built at the corner of Greenbelt Road and Hanover Parkway on the tall building over there. So, yeah, council member.
Thank you. I have a few questions. So one of the attachments that you included, thank you for including it, was around the number of cell phone towers that are in Greenbelt. I guess, do you have a sense, or where could we find a comparison? So it does actually list some nearby cities, but I don't know if those nearby cities are the same size, meaning geographic size, as well as population size, so that if I looked in, like, I wouldn't compare Greenbelt to Upper Marlboro or Baltimore because the geographic differences are definitely different. So I'm thinking like we probably need to look at maybe Hyattsville. We could look at, because I want to understand how many cell phone towers these other jurisdictions have in comparison to what we have. Because when I look at this number, I don't know how to benchmark it. Like when I look at it, I'm like, oh, that seems like a lot of cell phone towers. But we could look at another jurisdiction and it could be double the triple the amount, which means that we're very low. So I think doing some type of comparison to other jurisdictions would be helpful for us to be able to then have some accurate data to say, based on the number of people that we have, size of our city, how our city is structured geographically, this is what we would probably need to be able to build up that infrastructure.
I think those are excellent questions. Yeah, please go ahead.
There's two things I thought about that. So one, in reading the consultant's guide, there's a section that talks about how to evaluate do a radio frequency analysis and physical site audits to look at the cell density and how many estimate how many providers are in the market so that you can make an estimate on how suitable a partnership with a carrier will be. So the
Right.
consultants can do that level of assessment. They have the data sets to be able to do that so that they're able to make a match with a carrier's interest of adding an additional tower in our municipality, in part because it's a numbers game, right? They
Yeah.
want a return on their investment.
Sure.
The second thought that I had was when you look at the clustering of towers in and around Greenbelt, one of the things that to consider is how many vehicles flow through those areas with the cluster of towers. So if you look at where they're clustered around those intersections of high that are known to have high vehicle counts. So one is the Capitol Beltway. So you can see that along the Capitol Beltway, you're seeing that cluster of towers because vehicles are hopping from one tower to
Right.
the next and whatnot. And now most new vehicles have some sort of internet device connected to it, right? So that's part of that clustering. Why that clustering is happening around these major highways. The other cluster that you see in the map is that cluster at the intersection of Baltimore, Washington Parkway, and the Capitol Beltway in Greenbelt Road. Though the Parkway and the Capitol Beltway just has a ton of traffic. We're talking about the Beltway having over 100,000 vehicles per day. So I think if we look at just the clustering, it doesn't tell the story. We got to align that vehicle count.
One more question, if you don't mind.
Please go ahead.
Um, so I had on my holiday travel, I was in a location which had these light pole, cell phone, or internet, whatever, frequency boosters, whatever it is. And I think it takes additional infrastructure even for those. And I'd be interested to also learn, how effective they are versus doing additional, like traditional towers. Because my understanding is that those kind of light pole towers are more restricted in the area that they're sort of boosting the access. And so my thought is, are you putting money into developing those where you're not actually going to get a bigger boom versus should we put actually money more into traditional towers to be able to increase the access? I don't know. I just don't know enough about the effectiveness of that strategy. So I appreciate that you were able to bring in some alternatives. That might be one that I think is another thing to consider when looking at all of this. There isn't just one strategy to look at.
You bring up two really good points to consider. One is that small cell tower concept. Many years ago, we heard that was the future, that we were going to see these small cell towers everywhere because everyone's going to be using their phone and these things are just sucking up all kinds of bandwidth. There's a county-wide map available at the county that Crown Castle had proposed installing all of these small cell towers everywhere, and it hasn't happened. That hasn't come true. I think that may still be the intent of the carriers because so much of our work and business is happening on cell phones. So I think that's still a possibility out in the future. It's dependent on where do the carriers and the cell towers want to move the business forward. I was reading an investor guide on what's happening in the REITs, the Real Estate Investment Trust, and the two things that are moving these trusts are it's not the commercial buildings, it's hospitals, medical facilities, and towers are still having growth. So the cell tower business is still growing business. It's not growing what it was projected to grow, but there's still a demand for more real estate to host cell towers to power devices. So I think there's still an interest to go in that direction. That technology has not gone away. There was a concern that Starlink and those brilliant minds that came up with space internet was going to be the killer of the fiber to the home and all of those services. That hasn't been the case. I love having high-speed internet on an airplane, but that hasn't come true to replace typical internet home. The second thought or a topic you raise is where could we be investing our resources to solve challenges? And in speaking today with Mayor Pro Tem Weaver, she had shared her experience of trying to do a transaction at Labor Day and not having internet access at the space. So there are spaces in our community where we're gathering, congregating, and doing business, and it may be a good idea for us to invest in information technology infrastructure there, such as Wi-Fi, so that we could at least connect these community spaces to the broader world. And when we have activities there, people can be on video or read a book or have conversations in these spaces or do business transactions. If you're buying a book, being able to tap out there at the Roosevelt Center or in the parking lot, whether that's farmer's market or something else going on. So we know these spaces, we're having pain points because we don't have good internet connectivity there. And there's low-hanging fruit that we could run infrastructure out to these facilities easier doing it ourselves than getting a carrier to come in and build something. And it's not going to be as invasive as some of these other technologies. I think everyone's comfortable with Wi-Fi around us, right? I think it might be more approachable by our residents for us to have Wi-Fi in the parking lots and in the Roosevelt Center than it is to have a small cell tower.
Those are great points. I think with your question about how we compare with other cities, I'm not really, other than the Wi-Fi access being provided, most other municipalities that I know of are not in the business of building cell phone towers. It's the providers that actually build those. So that's why I'm so hot on trying to get Verizon here to talk with them to let them know that their customers, want the service. Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, Ms. Alvarez, if I can share, so I used the website that Mr. Salmaron had created and pulled up. I think I should be able to, let's see if it'll allow me just to share my full screen. So in theory, if it decides to come up, there we go. So just pulling up from that same website, just to Councilmember McKinney's question. So that's the comparison between Greenbelt and Hyattsville, just as an example. So I think one thing that I notice is just the distribution. It looks like Greenbelt has clusters that sort of miss the center, where Hyattsville looks a little bit more distributed. And I think part of that may be because we have, Greenbelt National Park south of us and Beltsville Agricultural Research Center to the north of us, which are not, which are open areas for the most part, some buildings, but, mostly open areas and not population centers. So less coverage around the north side of Greenbelt Center compared to someplace like Hyattsville that has more built up areas surrounding it. So just thought I would, since I pulled that up as a comparison.
And this map also shows that clustering around the Baltimore-Washington Parkway.
Yeah. But I think, Mr. Samaron, your point about that we can do, because it seems like we have, sort of a multi-pronged problem, and I think we need to think about what are the problems that we're trying to solve, because I think some people may have problems with getting good calling within their homes, and that might be, we might be able to help guidance on, okay, well, here's how you can get a boost, or here, if you're not familiar with using Wi-Fi or voice over IP, here's how you can do that. That's a different question versus sort of public spaces like parks and Roosevelt Center that are city controlled, that could be, we could put Wi-Fi there and that would allow people to do the same thing in those public spaces versus sort of the general areas where the cell phone coverage is poor, where you're maybe not near somewhere where you'd expect Wi-Fi. And I think some of those are some of the concerns about that we've heard expressed from people, is they want to be able to make emergency calls, and you're not necessarily going to be in some place that has Wi-Fi when you want to make an emergency call.
Or power.
Or power, yeah. And I think, and then if power goes out, that's a whole separate issue. So now it's also an interesting question in terms of technology. I think some of the newer phones also have some of those satellite capabilities, at least to do text messages. I was having a a conversation over Christmas with my father-in-law who likes to hike and my brother-in-law who works for the Forest Service and knows some things about wilderness stuff. And I guess, some of the new technology with new phones that you might not be able to get a voice call out, but you could get a text message out potentially. And so we had a discussion about when my father-in-law is hiking by himself, what he should do in terms of being able to get, and that's much more remote areas. But I also think some of the new technologies are going to change people's expectations a little bit too. 'Cause I think, some of the new cell phones can do texts over satellite, and so it matters less whether your voice signal is good. Not that, but although 911 cannot do text messages, so that's something to consider, at least not at this point.
No, you have a-
Councilmember Niesel.
Thank you. I had two questions. One of the first things that jumped out at me in the presentation that's in here about where we could lease or what have you is zoning. Are there any restrictions that you know of that would preclude any parts of kind of where we are seeing these major gaps from being considered?
It depends on what locations. I think in most of our city facilities, I do not foresee a zoning issue.
Okay.
In the zoning, there's actually been preemptive legislation at the state level to keep municipalities from weighing in on where small cell towers will go. So because state legislators have anticipated communities not wanting them in their backyard, so it's limiting the input that communities can have where towers will go.
Okay.
Now, we wouldn't offer up sites that can have a detrimental impact to our forest or facilities.
Of course. And then the second is more of a perception question, just because I'm so sorry. I've heard this a lot. To your knowledge, has the city rebuffed any offers from telecommunications companies over the past, say, 8 years to have a beautiful tower that provides us wonderful service?
I'm aware of 2 instances where the city opposed one tower at the Eleanor Roosevelt High School and an effort to put antennas at the police station.
Okay. Thank you. And then I have I'm hearing, I want to make sure that I have heard kind of 3 different things right now. We've talked about having community-wide Wi-Fi. We've talked about it being like a safety issue, and perhaps this being like an education campaign about giving people other options in the meantime. And then I've also heard just kind of generally from community members that this is frustrating. Lots of people tell me Greenbelters are great behind a cause. So if we do come to any sort of decisions about what our community might be willing to do, then I'm sure that they would be willing to rally behind a cause such as call your telecommunications provider and ask for better service in your house in this zip code. So just know that we have willing residents.
Councilmember, really great point. I'd really like to try and go beyond that. I think that the city, I'd like to see the city somehow just facilitate a list. If we can get a list of residents that are having the specific problem, public safety problem of using the cell phone, we should be able to compile a list. It'll be at least 30 or 40 names, probably more than that. We need to present that to Verizon and say, hey, your customers are having problems. Can you do something about it? So you presented 3 different bits of information, really great research. The information from the consultants that work with these cell phone tower builders or service providers, a lot of great points in that. One had to do with the idea of co-locating antenna versus building a tower. And, I think the topography of Greenbelt and the fact that we've got such a great tree canopy makes it kind of challenging. But, when you talk about the north end of Greenbelt, you're talking about the top of Ridge Road. And, that's the highest point in Greenbelt in so many ways. So the idea of co-locating or getting antenna in that part of Greenbelt in the center, high up. There aren't that many choices. I mean, we don't really have, other than the water tower, I guess the elementary school or one of the churches could maybe do something up there, but that sort of limits our choices. So I'm not sure about this, but I think the tree canopy, when it comes to cell phone service, is a factor. Maybe not, maybe, but that topography thing is important.
Yes, the tree canopy is an issue. It's not an unsolvable issue. I think that it depends on what we're willing to advocate for, what sites um, we think we can offer. You mentioned three. There is Northway Fields. There is the police station. There's this building. There's the fire station. There are light poles at Braden Fields. So there are, if we start exploring all the sites, there are numerous sites. I don't think it's entirely up to us on what's the best fit. I think it's a conversation. One of the uh, one of the informational points in the consultant is doing the search ring, identifying these locations, and then exploring what is the strategic location or value of these locations to a carrier to solve carrier problems. And we wouldn't know that unless we give them pinpoints of these locations and ask a consultant or the telecoms how to ask them how these locations fit into their infrastructure, and can we improve service by placing either antennas or tower at these locations. Now, there's a difference between an antenna and a tower. So what's at the water tower, it's not a cell tower. It's an antenna on a pole, and you probably drive by these buildings all the time, and there are flat panels. They're meant to be disguised and blend in with the building in the sky. So they're not the Eiffel Tower of cell towers. They're just antennas on top of buildings. They could be as simple as that.
But this question about gathering the information from our residents, the ones who are having problems, it's sort of like with the franchise agreement that we have with Verizon and Comcast. When there's a problem, if someone writes in and complains, we record their name, and if we have enough people in one area that are complaining about the cable box being open or wires hanging out, we complain about that and they respond. So I, for one, would like to actually ask if we can set up a page or something where people can submit their names if they're having a problem, so we just have a good list of who's having the problem and where.
I like your idea because it would have some city weight behind it. However, in my experience, and this is working on behalf of a municipality, on behalf of my own home, and on behalf of a company, in all three cases, unless I was the customer myself, they did not care to talk to me. So I think that it would be better if we had, or it would perhaps have more weight, at least on the call service side, if they were getting multiple calls from actual customers.
That makes sense. We could still serve as a clearinghouse, and just having that list would give us a better sense of exactly who's having the problem, if it's a problem with the cell service or if it's a Wi-Fi thing, and it would just kind of help define the scope of the problem that people are having. Yeah, council member.
I think it might be worth trying to do both. And, we know the main area that's most impacted. So if there is a call to action, maybe it's a survey with a QR code. You could go door to door, talk to people, table. I mean, there's different things that we can do. Obviously, when people are in Roosevelt Center, you can table. It's a very high frequency. I mean, it's a little cold now to do tabling, but maybe when the weather gets nicer and folks are coming out again, I think there's plenty of events where we can try to, if we have not been able to resolve this issue, try and get information out in a two-way manner that has follow-up calls to action to people, Once we have their information, it's easy for the city to then email those people and say, you know, we're having a coordinated, you know, please can you call this number and, you know, just voice your concern, leave your address, or send an email, and vice versa. You know, those people all probably know their neighbors that are probably also having those issues as well. So I think if we can find a few people at the heart of, you know, the impacted, you know, the impacted area, it's I have AT&T. It's been improving for me since I moved here, which is where things are moving in the right direction, at least in my experience. I haven't dropped as many calls, but it still happens occasionally, and it is very frustrating.
Thank you. Councilman.
So, I agree that I think hearing directly from residents is important. I do wonder if being able to present a stronger business case to the companies by showing the amount of people, the impact, the total amount, like the impacts of not having the service. So I would say, you know, if we are able to show the magnitude of the problem, that could also be equally beneficial to hearing from our residents. Like, I just don't think it's a one solution, one prong solution sort of thing. I think as a municipality, we can also say, okay, if we have, I'm just pulling numbers out, right? But if we have 400 homes, right?
Yes.
In the center, and on average, they utilize how many hours of internet and during the day, and then without having that, what does that look like? What is the cost? Like, I think being able to show those sort of things can help make the case for our residents, in addition to them also vocalizing their concern. So I think it's going to take more than just kind of tabling and writing letters. I think it's equally important to have that movement, but I also think that presenting the data and the facts on the impact is going to be equally as important. The second thing, separate from that, but going back to something that we said before around public spaces and sort of an interim solution around, you know, how do we help people, you know, in the center and other areas. I'm wondering if we have had a conversation with the school system, because I have also heard that self-service within the elementary school is also very bad. And so could the school system also be working on directly boosting, sorry.
It's on purpose.
Oh,
They firewall them.
okay, okay.
They do not want kids to have cell phones.
Oh, but does that, so they just, I mean, okay. So they-
Councilmember, I heard the same thing at one point about, specifically about Greenbelt Elementary School, that they had the staff,
Right.
faculty had, there was no service.
Oh. So that's an interesting point. So to not have the kids have the cell phone service, but that's blocking the staff from being able to have service.
I don't know how the county does it.
I think that would be an interesting question to be able to ask the school system whether or not there is a reason why cell phone service is not as strong in the school. And they should answer that question. Well,
Well-
let's hear from them.
For
We're simply presenting what we're hearing from the community. And what we're hearing from the community is that that's an issue.
for the two schools in, or the schools around Greenbelt, I looked this up and doing some of the research on the city's history opposing cell towers. PGCPS had an agreement with Milestones to explore cell towers on school properties for various business goals. One was to expand network of cell towers, but also create a revenue structure for the schools. There was a lot of backlash from communities on this idea of putting cell towers in schools. So much that the PGCPS in 2017 terminated all relationship with Milestone. The company that had proposed building a tower at Eleanor Roosevelt, which the city opposed, was Milestone Communications out of Virginia. And the PGCPS published a press release August 29 of 2017, just terminating all relationship with Milestone, and that was numerous cell tower projects that were being planned, and they were all abandoned.
Okay, Councilmember.
Yes. So I'm hearing, yeah, I want to make sure I'm understand this because I know a lot of people are very concerned about this issue. So I'm hearing kind of not a chicken and egg problem, but I would be curious, you know, how quickly we can identify is the issue the site availability and us trying to offer up sites as quickly as possible, or to Councilmember McKinney's point, are there other economic factors as well that are kind of leaving the center of Greenbelt in this kind of dead zone? Because if it's primarily economic, you know, we could offer as many sites as we want, and then they're not going to take any action. And then I think that becomes more of a regulatory problem, right? It's saying that you're now intentionally choosing not to serve customers. You know, we're having a huge dialogue nationally about rural broadband, trying to get, you know, internet service out to people. But if people don't even have phone service, you know, it's not much of a consolation that you might one day get internet, but you don't have phone service. So maybe we need to talk to other jurisdictions that are, you know, might also be facing this and seeing what kind of advocacy would be necessary at the state or federal level to actually make sure that, you know, these companies that are basically, you know, not monopolies, but there's only a few actors in this entire field, you know, they have to cover everyone, considering the fact that there's not very much competition in this space.
There is competition in the space, you know, in this area. I think there's a narrative that perhaps we need to change. If Verizon wanted to get into the city through Milestone, and that didn't work out so well, they might have a negative view on any effort to expand service, right? So I think it's worth having that conversation. Hey, it's 2025. The science behind cell towers and these radio waves is different. So I think there's that issue to address. There's also, if we look at it from the economics, I don't think Verizon will want to ignore such a market like Greenbelt, especially where we're located. So I think if they become concerned of losing their market share in the city, they might do something to improve access. I know of one company who is very pleasant to work with, and I'll go on record saying, if I were to dial our government liaison representative for T-Mobile, they'll pick up.
Yep.
That's not the case with Verizon. So maybe we could deepen our relationship with T-Mobile and say, T-Mobile, we have aspirational goals for technology in the city. What does the future of cell communication looks like, and can we partner that? We're talking about smart city technology. This is perhaps where we start. And if Verizon doesn't get their act together, they're going to lose out, not just here in Greenbelt, but in other communities. And that is a business decision. That is going to have real financial implications for them.
It's true. That's one of the reasons why I think we need to try and collect names, or just get a good count, so that we can make that business case. And there's actually another side to our relationship with Verizon in the center, and that has to do with broadband connections. And Mr. Hartman, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that a number of the merchants in Roosevelt Center for many years were trying to get broadband connection from Verizon, and Verizon basically refused to do it. They did not want to upgrade their infrastructure. So the service that's provided in the food co-op and the New Deal Cafe is Comcast. Am I correct? Please go to the microphone. Yeah, I think
Michael, I have
that's
a
how
brief
I don't know if that's changed.
No. Verizon refused to put FiOS in Roosevelt
The
Center
microphone
because they
on.
said it would take too long or cost too much money to do that. So
It's on.
the cafe's been using Comcast. Since I'm up here, I want to remind the mayor. You may remember Theodora Scarrato
Yes.
and her concerns about this. I don't know whether she knows about this meeting or not, but she raised a lot of concerns, including not putting cell phone towers in schools,
Yes.
which is why there isn't much. That could be one of the reasons. And the city council actually did. This was about 10 years ago. And she brought up all those issues that you might want to consider also.
I believe she still lives in the community, and she's a passionate advocate,
Yeah.
you know,
So
nationally, I guess. Yeah. So council, let's kind of, let's land this plane. You know, we've got the work session. We have a few choices on our plate. Definitely want to hear from, talk to Verizon somehow, open up the dialogue, and perhaps we can, you know, this is a new day. So perhaps we can talk with them. Perhaps they're willing to do some things that they haven't been in the past. And, you know, because public safety is paramount. I think it's really important that distinction between broadband, Wi-Fi, and cell service is important to note because there are some places, for example, I live in Greenbrier, and our structures are such that, you know, I can't get Wi-Fi, good Wi-Fi signal, good cell phone signal in my condominium. And I think that's true with a lot of the block buildings in GHI, just because of the construction, concrete blocks and whatnot, or brick, you know, so many people use Wi-Fi when they're inside of their structure, and being able to make that distinction. Some of the people that are having problems, maybe they don't have a computer, maybe they don't have broadband, so they don't have that option. Councilmember Pompey, did you have any thoughts on this topic?
Yes, I would say, is this working? To Councilmember McKinney's point about PGCPS, I do think it's worth reaching out to them again because they need money. I mean, they're having budgetary constraints just like the municipalities are, the county is, the states. I mean, because that's where their money comes from, is the county and the state. So they're experiencing financial constraints. They may consider changing their mind about cell phone towers and on which properties they would allow them. So I think it's not a bad idea to just reach out and ask if they've considered, such leases. And I'm hearing from you, Mr. Samaran, do you think that if we want to have towers or antennas on city-owned sites, do you think that we should employ a consultant to help us find the best locations for those? Is that something you think would be a next step to improving service or to figuring out where the ideal locations for these towers are? I mean, we can see the holes, but that doesn't mean we know where towers should go.
Right. Yes, I agree with the second point that working with a consultant, they have access to data tools and have expertise that we don't have. So I think it's important. We can leverage that expertise. The consultant that I pointed out, if they are to folks like this consultant, their customer is not the carrier. Their customer is the property owner, the
Right.
landowner, because they get paid through the leases.
Right.
But, so that's been an advantage to the municipality because it's clear who the customer is. It's us. Obviously, they're gonna work to ensure a relationship with a carrier, and whoever's the easiest to work with or who's more interested will essentially make a deal first. But I would, if we approach the putting our properties up for announcing that they are available for leasing, it should be a multi-carrier approach. It wouldn't make it exclusive. So working with the consultant, we can figure out, does it make that we put up a monopole for antenna that multiple antennas could be put on? And I think if we reduce the barrier for the carriers, for multiple carriers to be on, we all win. Because I'm not interested in helping one provider create a monopoly in the city. We want to make a fair space for all of them to operate because competition ultimately means better service for all of our customers.
I mean, I would be interested in receiving some bids from consultants who could help us figure that out. Figure out the best path forward for us on that front. I think doing some kind of citywide survey is great. Like I think it was, I don't know if it was Councilmember McKinney said, I think we have to do a multi-pronged approach because yes, I think it's a good idea to reach out to residents and, get them to sign a petition, ask them to call, but like we already know that there's a problem. Like we
Mhm.
know it. So
Right.
we should start working towards solving it as well. Like we have to like be proactive here. I think that's what our residents are asking us to do. So I think that we need to be, while we're getting them to sort of do some kind of outreach to their carriers and sign this petition, I think that we also need to be moving forward and like, okay, well, what are the paths that are open to us? So if considering city-owned property for towers and antenna, if that's a path open to us, we should start exploring what does that look like,
Mhm.
And I think also, like I said, reaching out to PGCPS and just asking them if this is something that they are still considering, or because I don't know, maybe they do have some towers, maybe they have some other kind of agreement. I don't know, just to see, because we do have a lot of PGCPS property in the city. And I think I will also just, if I may, I got a message from a resident, Peter Tubin, and he said, I use an app, Network Cell Info Lite, LITE, that gives good geographic info on strength. I also endorse us doing a survey. I'm surprised to hear this wasn't at least on some level available. That's what he messaged me that just a few minutes ago.
Good suggestion.
So, yes.
Mayor
Those
Pro
are
Tem?
my thoughts.
Thank you so much. Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, I see we have at least one public comment, but I've been trying to sort of make a list of categories of follow-up. So if we want to do the public comment first, and then we can see if I've captured what seems like good follow-up items or not.
That sounds good. One thing I want to make clear, though, I asked in collecting these names of the folks that are having problems, it's not so much to ask them to do something directly. It's since we're at this point, so that we can speak at the weight of the numbers. So when we're speaking on their behalf, making that business case. Let's see, we do have some public comment. Mr. Orleans?
Bill Orleans. I had a sense at the beginning of the work session, and then I think again just now, that a request had been made of representatives of at least Verizon, if not T-Mobile and AT&T, to be present tonight. And apparently there was a hiccup with regard, at least the representative from Verizon. I think before we can expect better cell service in town, we should expect better responsiveness from the cell service providers. If there was officially a request for a representative to be here, I'd be interested in knowing why they are not. But my essential question is to represent myself as not really understanding this technology at all. I don't know. First of all, in the legend, it doesn't indicate the difference between the red dots and the blue dots and the one black dot on this first map. I'd be interested. It's not in a legend. I'd be interested in knowing. But I don't know the ideal distance between towers, their heights, or the size of the little electronic gadget that's on top of the tower that receives and sends. I'd be interested in knowing more about that, and whether or not the competing providers have competing technologies, which are either better or worse than the others. I'd be interested in knowing that. I would suggest before council is going to do what it will do, but I'd suggest before this discussion proceeds to any kind of formal vote as to do anything, that the providers be asked once again, assuming they were asked tonight, to send a representative. So could there be a more thorough discussion, including some of the technical details, such as how high do they have to be? What's the size of the gadget on top? Is it better to have more smaller towers and senders, receivers, transponders, whatever they're called? or less, but higher? All these technical questions should be answered. So my question to management is, were they asked to be here tonight and why they're not? And will they be asked again to be here before council will be making a decision as to what to do?
So Verizon was invited to attend. The representative is out of office through today. So we didn't hear back from the Verizon government liaison representative. The T-Mobile representative was not asked to join. I'm certain that if we invited them, they would be here. And that's in part because we have a relationship with T-Mobile. When the council asked T-Mobile to come and present about the tower at WSSC Water Tower, they were here. They presented on 2 occasions with council about the cell tower at the water tower. When we asked them to present at the Four Cities meeting on the smart cities technology, Mr. Orleans, you were at that meeting, I believe, at the Four Cities Coalition. They were glad to attend. They saw it as an opportunity to talk up their network and the wonderful things that they're doing. Yeah, I think that's a relationship we don't have currently with Verizon. We moved over 30 cell phone lines away from Verizon late last year. We didn't hear anything from Verizon on it, as if nothing happened. I would say that if I'm a business and somebody moved 30 plus cell phone lines away from my business, I would be worried, but there's no concern on their part.
Yeah, it's disappointing. Of course, the holidays, but it's just disappointing. I see Tom Jones is here. Mr. Jones, welcome.
Yeah, hi, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having this meeting. I think it is definitely a problem in the city. Many parts of the city with many carriers have a lot of trouble. I was watching this at home and had to come down to give feedback. As far as I can tell, the Zoom link was never posted. And there's a bunch of conversation going on YouTube, but as far as I can tell, nobody from the city actually looks at where people are actually talking right now. So if you might want to take a look there, because there's a number of us who have been talking and meeting about it. It was about 10 years ago, but I had an extended conversation with a team lead responsible for cell phone support for a region of a cell phone provider. I also used to work at the technical end of the cellular industry, a company that designs the towers that like Verizon and AT&T buy. So but I don't think the technical focus is really important. But I do have a key suggestion. When you call, if I'm a T-Mobile customer, if I call Verizon or I say, hey, Verizon, you have a problem, they don't care. I'm not their customer. But the providers have their own coverage maps. If you call in and say, I have a problem, I can't make calls or I can't get data from my home, they log the exact geographic coordinates. They have their coverage map will show if a whole bunch of people call in who are current customers, and those maps will will be reviewed. And I think that may be the most effective way. Yeah. So instead of like creating a long list and taking a bunch of time to get a whole bunch of people who just report generic cell phone problems, I would suggest perhaps creating a how-to list. If you're a Verizon customer, here's the phone number, press 6, then 3, then 11, or whatever it's supposed to be, and tell them this information, which would be like, I am a current Verizon customer, I live here, and describe the problem in detail about how you can't make a connection. And obviously distinguishing between cellular connections and Wi-Fi connections is really important. But if somebody isn't really sure about that, then the representative should be able to tease out the differences there. So that's my suggestion for potentially how to move forward. That was a decade ago. Maybe things have changed since then, but I think that might be a much more effective to help make it easy for a grassroots response to show up and flood the providers. My impression also is that because it was like 15 years ago, that companies were building out in this region and building towers. That was exactly the time, and that precipitated the small group of loud citizens who said they didn't want towers in Old Greenbelt. And my impression is that like after that, providers really kind of stopped expanding. So the opportunity passed us by then, and that may be part of the reason why our coverage is bad. One other thing, Josue is exactly on point. One of the areas I do know about is tuning networks to give coverage. the Beltway and the Parkway get a lot of coverage because there are tens of thousands of people driving through there. And so that's part of the reason why our coverage is so bad, is because the antennas are all focused there. If we get some antennas in Old Town, it'll get a lot better.
Yeah, Mr. Jones, you're past the time limit.
I'm sorry.
I did want you put together some 10 or 15 years ago. You put together these service maps that were very helpful. Was there some resource that we did not talk about tonight that would be the best reference?
I
for-
will take a look. I think I have them on my computer. I'll take a look and be able to provide that afterward, I hope. And if not tonight, I can send an email later.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councilmember. There's somebody online.
A couple of comments that have come in via email that I wanted to share from Renaud Brown. He says, I just wanted to note that Wi-Fi in the center and perhaps other spots in the city would help. Gardenway has always been a dead spot in the
Right.
city. And Nick Liano says, hello from my house using Wi-Fi. Do you think the city would have any leverage in the sense that the city could say the providers are in a way in breach of their contract? For example, there are probably many other green belters like myself who financed their phones with Verizon or AT&T, not knowing beforehand what the service would be like in Greenbelt. Would this give them a way out?
What the city? I wish the city did have a contract. The city does not have a contract with Verizon. Individuals do.
Yeah.
But if you are a Verizon subscriber and you have a contract with them and you're not getting service, you should, break the contract. Go to another provider. That's what I did. But
I wouldn't tell people to break their contract.
Oh, I'm
We
sorry, I
want them
didn't
to
mean
be
to
in
say
breach
that.
of contract. But if they have the opportunity to change provider, why not?
Yeah. Let's see. It looks like there's a comment online. Where are we at? Let's see. Is there anybody else in the room would like to make a comment? Yes, Mr. Tubin.
Yeah, my name is Peter Tobin. I'm from 18 Court Ridge. I passed the 39th parallel to come here. I was in the same story as before. I was home watching and I didn't know how to make a comment. I'll actually amplify exactly what he said. And I put a comment in the Facebook apps for two of your council members. And that is, I was using a crowdsourcing app, of which I gave the name to yours. I think that's the right approach if we have problems. But there's one problem with that approach of the crowdsourcing using an app like this, and that is not every phone is the same. Newer phones have much better detection noise levels. So if you see that coverage map that I saw earlier, from all three providers, it's 100% coverage. That's just not realistic, right? They use a very good low noise amplifier to figure that out. It doesn't work for all phones. So that's what I'm saying. It depends on your phone. So that suggests that we should have a survey.
Thank you very much. There's a comment online. It's from Katrina. And she says Verizon in the past has said that the problems are related to building construction in GHI. However, the cell data service in the same outside of buildings. However, the cell data service is the same outside of the buildings. So that's that question with the block GHI units or brick. Or I don't know, even in Greenbelt Station, for example, I don't know there, but do you get, if you open your cell phone in your home and you're not on Wi-Fi, do you get good reception?
I don't have a problem, but if you look at the map clusters, there's a lot more towers over near us on
That is true,
Greenbelt
yeah,
West.
yeah.
So I don't usually have a problem with my cell phone signal. Although I do connect to Wi-Fi in my house
Oh, yeah.
still. But no, I think it's not as much of an issue over there. I haven't noticed about that, and I have not heard neighbors complain about such.
Okay, just asking. So we do need to kind of wrap things up. So with the current cell towers and antenna, the listings that you have, is there any way to know who the contractor is, between the cell providers and the buildings or the tower? Is it Milestone mostly, or is there some way to look and see who? Because maybe working with, talking to one of those companies or something might be a good way of getting at the information, the same information that a consultant might give you. I don't know. Is that something easy to do? not that we're
The-
looking for easy solutions.
The cell tower maps does provide owner information. Who is
Uh-huh.
the owner of that tower? Sometimes it's an LLC or it varies. But I think we'll continue our effort to get a hold of a Verizon representative because I
Yeah.
think that's the pain point. It sounds like a lot of the issues are Verizon and Greenbelt Center, and this is the business that we have the most difficulty having a relationship with. So we'll work on that front to have work on that relationship. I think we do have we still have a lot of business with Verizon, so we have that leverage, if you will. I don't know that they didn't care about the 30 lines, but maybe they care about 70 police cars that are connected to a Verizon network, and moving those, I think that's substantial. So we'll try that effort and see if we can get them at the table. Getting T-Mobile at the table is not going to be a problem. I think we'll work on around availability, their availability and council's availability. I think rushing to get this meeting over the holidays, I think it's a challenge
Yeah.
getting anyone. So I think that was part of the issue of being able to secure someone for this meeting, such a short time frame. Also, we didn't get the opportunity to have this discussion, right, where we could explore the opportunities and decide on a multi-pronged approach and how to layer that in a strategy to solve this problem. So I think now that we've had this conversation, we have clear intentions about what we want to accomplish and how we want to accomplish. And clearly, having the carriers at the table looking at solutions for additional antennas or towers is part of that mix.
So the other things that that I've heard, you can actually add more in. This idea of putting together a portal or some sort of a form or a QR code or whatever, so that people, if we could put up sort of like a how-to list of instructions to people that are having problems with their Verizon service, and post that as a page or as a pop-up page, and also provide a way for people to sign in and let us know where they live and if they're having a problem and what the nature of the problem, so we can aggregate that information. Is that something we can do over the next month?
I'm not clear about what the feasibility of that would be on our end, because I think it will be more useful to have customers complain to the carrier directly about connectivity issues that they're having. And for the reasons that Tom and Peter have mentioned, that the carriers can log that information on their end, and that's also their customer, right? They're the folks that are paying a monthly bill. So I think that we can do the tutorial to encourage people to complain to their carriers of cell service issues. But I think it'll be more powerful coming from them than if we aggregated the information. I'm also a believer that I'd like to have the least amount of information on our residents as possible. So I wouldn't, while I'd love to collect cell phone numbers and who their carrier is, I don't want to have too much personal identifying information on our customer, on our residents. So
I can appreciate that.
Because-
So can we go ahead and put that to-do list on
Yeah.
how, please contact your carrier if you're having a problem?
Yeah,
Can we do
and-
something like that?
yes, and I'll add that what's my basis for not having that data of, so whether it's the resident cell phone numbers, the carriers and that, any data that we collect is public information. So anyone can petition that record. That's a public record. So I will be cautious about collecting those information.
It's a good point.
information from
I just
citizens.
want to know, how many and
Mhm.
where they are. That's what I really want to know,
Mhm.
so that we can have this discussion with the carriers in a robust way and
Mhm.
hold them to the fire a little bit. Now, I'm still, concerned about this issue in Roosevelt Center of not having FiOS access. It's a big deal. Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, and apologies to Mr. Jones. I didn't see your email right away. Usually it pops up, and we did realize right at 7:30 that the Zoom link hadn't been posted and posted it on the calendar, but it wasn't until right as the meeting was started that we realized the Zoom link hadn't been posted. So apologies to those who were, but we do have a few people on Zoom, so some people eventually found the link. But well, we appreciate you coming down, but apologies for not having the link posted right away. Yeah, I just now did. I can grab those because there might be some useful things there. I don't usually pull up the YouTube. I usually have Zoom open. I don't usually have the YouTube open. But so these are sort of I think I gathered sort of 5 areas that it seemed like we've talked about and different things to follow up on. One is sort of this resident outreach we were just talking about, tabling or other methods to reach people who have issues, maybe not collecting names so much as providing scripts or guidance about how they can reach out to companies themselves. So that's sort of one area. We talked about infrastructure, maybe forming possibly some kind of task group to generate a list of possible locations where we would be willing to have antennas or towers. And then possibly utilizing an expert consultant to evaluate those locations and actually, present those to the companies but first coming up with a list of where we're willing to have them and then figuring out which of those are acceptable or useful. I think that we talked about a few different avenues of direct advocacy by the city, maybe collecting data about the magnitude of the problem, the users or locations that are having issues, the apps that show service, and collecting some more data. And then as Councilmember McKinney was talking about, trying to maybe use that to make a business case for solving the service problems and improving relationship with the cell phone companies and their local representatives. And then also following up with PGCPS to see their current stance on towers and antennas. So I put all of those sort of in direct advocacy by the city. Then sort of a more broad education and communication. I think providing some guidance for homeowners to improve calling capability in their own homes if people aren't familiar with using voice over IP or some of the what are the boosters that you can get. There may be some things that we can help people do that within their own homes. That's not necessarily something we're doing, but we can provide some information. And then the last sort of area that it seems like we talked about was Wi-Fi in public spaces, looking into public Wi-Fi in maybe Roosevelt Center and parks. And then we didn't specifically talk about this, but this came up earlier today when I was talking to Mr. Samaron, the idea of improving Wi-Fi in our public buildings. We do have Wi-Fi, but maybe making sure that the signal is good in all public buildings and actually we could even think about whether outreach to some of the businesses, because I know there's Wi-Fi at the New Deal. I actually don't know if there's Wi-Fi at the Co-op, but places like reaching out to businesses and maybe helping them make sure they have Wi-Fi inside those buildings where it isn't always possible. And then sort of eventually maybe we can utilize some of those light fixtures from Pepco for smart cities technologies, but that still has a few steps to go. So that's what I captured as things we've talked about and maybe some steps forward. Is there anything that I missed?
Well, just another suggestion as far as the connectivity in public places. There was a grant opportunity with Comcast back in 2004, 2003. I think they called it the Project Up or Lift project. It's Talent for Tomorrow Digital Equity Challenge, and they had funding, $75,000 grants for small cities, medium-sized cities, to actually put Wi-Fi in challenged areas in particular. And at one point, I thought they were actually looking at the Franklin Park, Spring Hill Lake area. So we should maybe check back with Comcast.
I did not touch anything to turn my microphone off. Turn my speaker down.
So we've covered a lot of ground. I would really like to see some progress in this area myself. And I think the combination of advocacy, education, and looking at infrastructure are the keys. So with the infrastructure piece, I don't think you really touched on this, Kristen, quite so much. But can you maybe look an RFP or a simple request to a contractor or a consultant to kind of do this work? I would want the scope to be really, really focused in terms of just taking the information that we have and mapping it out for public buildings or sites that would be most suitable. Is that what you had in mind?
Should council be open to exploring antennas and cell towers in our building? Yes, I would engage a consultant to explore lease arrangement with carriers. But I felt it would be inappropriate for me to engage those conversations given the history of opposing towers in the city.
Yeah, and I've said this before, I'll say it again. It's not so, it's council, we had residents that were passionate about, fighting this tower at Eleanor Roosevelt High School. And, the school system at the time became very, very opposed to it. So it was, council went on record reflecting the views of our residents. So it's not so much council being opposed to cell phone towers, it's our residents. We listen to our residents to a fault. Sometimes.
So I will explore that I'll have a conversation with several consultants and see what's the best. Obviously, I will be looking for things that will cost the least amount of money to
Least
the
amount of
city.
money, something,
So
very
pref-
focused scope.
Preferably something that pays on a milestone, meaning that if there is a fee incurred by us, that it will be covered through any lease arrangements that we make, like you would with a realtor or a leasing consultant.
Mhm.
That's on the cell towers. Was there another question? I'm sorry if I
Well,
missed.
no, I think we've covered quite a bit of ground, and I
Mhm.
know there's a few information items that we need to get to. Did you want to talk about the smart cities piece?
The smart cities, I think as we think about our IT infrastructure, we're exploring streetlights. Eventually, I think the council's interest would be being able to control the timing of the lights and the dimming, being able to dim them as necessary so that they're not on all the time. And as nighttime comes in, you want to dim them based on traffic and foot traffic or vehicle traffic. I think that model of service delivery for on streetlights will require a network. And I included the smart cities presentation because that's something we discuss with the four cities. It's something we discuss with T-Mobile. So I anticipated that council may want to deepen its relationship with one provider. If Verizon doesn't want to give us the time of day, then there's at least two other providers that have shown interest in our community, and one we have a really good working relationship with. It's worth considering deepening that relationship and accomplishing our IT or technology infrastructure goals with T-Mobile, but that obviously doesn't do anything for the Verizon customers. And I think that's a real pain point that we have to discuss. Are those customer residents willing to give up Verizon if we're deepening the relationship with T-Mobile? Are we influencing the market? Now, those are things to be mindful of. There might be people that feel that they're attached to Verizon because that's the first cell phone that they have and they want to be with that company. And I get that. There are people that may be attached to that. So I am being mindful that while for me on a business perspective and in building that relationship with T-Mobile, we already have it. They've gone out of the way to help us accomplish our own public safety needs for the administration and public works, and soon the police department. I think that's and we're getting a great deal. We're saving money as well from our Verizon bill by switching to T-Mobile. I think that's a good partner to have. If the partner, I think it's a good partnership to have when you have a vendor that's willing to solve your IT problems and help you save money. That's what T-Mobile has done for us, but that might not serve all of our residents. So I presented that presentation from T-Mobile because it's clearly a vendor that's interested in doing more with us.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. There are other vendors out there, though, that smart cities concept has been around for a little while. So, I mean, there are vendors that do work around public transportation where they use kiosk in different locations around in centers and at bus stops and civic locations that
Right.
provide information, but they also provide broadband and free Wi-Fi. So, I mean, there are services out there that could be of benefit. So, appreciate you putting that on the agenda, and we can talk about it some more as time goes on. So, but as far as building these towers, you talked about monopoles. If we had a monopole, would you want it to look sort of like a tree?
um, I don't like this visual crowding of things. We have signs, and at some point, when you have too many signs, you have too much visual crowding. The point of a sign is diminished. So I think we have to be mindful of how crowded we keep our spaces, whether they are road signs and all whatnot. Same with these towers, that they're unsightly, but there are ways to make them blend in a little bit better. And I have seen the example that Ms. McKinney shared with us. I've seen towers that look like pine trees and they blend in. And if you don't know what you're looking for, you can totally miss the tower and perceive
Well,
it to be
they
a
look
pine
a
tree.
little bit like a pine tree, but if you look closely, really you don't have to look that close at all. So if there's no further discussion, let's go ahead and pivot to the information items. Let's see, Mr. Summerone, you had one?
Yes, I had
And
one.
one
I
more.
think many of you know that we have a appeals hearing on January 12th. That's next week. Our lawyer, Sue Ellen, is working with the attorney for the county in hopes that we can get to a settlement and not litigate this on January 12th.
That's the firefighters.
I'm sorry, yes.
county.
It is the litigation with the county regarding the fire and EMS services. So just some background, Berwyn Heights has received the staffing. We are in line to get our staffing, but there's still a staffing problem at the county. Councilmember Pompey and I attended the last graduation that the county fire and EMS has. It was great. They had they had an amazing video on each of the graduates telling their story, and they looked like Hollywood videos.
We did.
Um,
Like lots of action shots
Mhm.
and like little bios on them. Like they're very professionally produced.
Mhm.
There was one of the women who graduated. She was like a legacy firefighter. Like both of her parents had been Prince George's County firefighters. So it's really nice. It's a nice ceremony.
Yeah. So this leadership, the new leadership, I think they're really working hard to fulfill their promise to us that they were going to work hard to increase their recruitment, get more graduates through the system, get them trained to serve all of our communities. It's taking time. Hence, I'm hopeful that our attorney is going to work out an agreement with the attorney for the county because it's in our interest, right? We're not interested in being in this adversarial relationship with the fire department and the county. It's a completely new administration, and I think we felt the difference almost right away, right? The new team come in and they were just a lot more collaborative, more communicative. So we want to build on that goodwill and that good relationship. So I hope that we can find some ground to move beyond this.
Yeah, so the aspiration is to try and actually settle this before we get to the hearing on the 12th.
Yes, and part of the settlement is that we have an agreement as council laid out what it wants to see, right? We want to see full restoration of a 24/7 personnel because our residents deserve the same protection that we previously had, which was a 24/7 operation. We're a sizable city with a lot of medical calls. We are strategically located for all those fire calls, so it just makes sense to have a fire apparatus here in the city and a paramedic unit in the city, 24/7.
Definitely. I heard there was an alarm or something at the Greenridge House over the weekend. Everybody had to come out. Berwyn Heights got there very, very fast, from what I heard. But you're right; it's not adversarial. We're all in this together. So, at the Four Cities meeting, depending on whether or not we're able to kind of work this out, maybe we can invite the chief to come out to the Four Cities meeting. What do you think?
I don't know if she can make it on that short of a notice, but she expressed it with Mr. Summeron and I that she did want to meet with us again.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, we can
Invite her.
we can invite her. When do we host?
Oh,
In
was
April.
April. or
Okay,
May.
well, I don't know if we can. I just don't know the protocols, like us inviting her to somebody else's, the meeting that someone else is hosting. But
Oh, we can just check.
yeah, we
check
can
with,
check in, and if they want
College
to
Park.
invite her, I
Mhm.
think that would be great. And if she can't make it, then we can invite her to our meeting in April.
That would be good, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, I will reach out to College Park, and since they're the host city, we don't want to override their agenda. Step on their toes.
We
But
all work-
definitely for
we
the
all work
April
together.
meeting.
Really looking forward to being in that nice city hall.
Oh, yeah, it's really nice. Councilmember Pompey.
Yes, sorry. There's going to be a town hall tomorrow night at Dora Kennedy French Immersion at 6 p.m. from 6 to 7:30, dealing with DKFI's move to the Robert Goddard Montessori campus. It's just specifically about Dora Kennedy. It's not about Spring Hill Lake, but they'll be talking about the moving plans, transportation, academic programs, building services, and more. And it's hosted by PGCPS leaders. So I just learned about it today, so I wanted to make sure that others were aware that it was happening, because even though it is a specialty school, there are lots of Greenbelt families who attend because of its proximity.
And that's at the French Immersion School?
Yes, from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks for letting us know about that. Councilmember Fritz.
Yes, I have some fun and good news about Metro and some unfortunate news about Metro. First, the good news, Yellow Line service has been restored. That is such great news for folks who don't want to have to transfer to get to the airport. That makes us such a great location. We're connected directly to the Yellow Line, to the airport. Half of all the Yellow Line trains will now stop in Greenbelt, so you can get on the metro. You don't need to pay to park at the airport. If you're going to DCA, we're also the closest airport to BWI. It's great. Metro did a very cute post about Wizard of Oz themed post about follow the yellow brick road to Greenbelt and the Emerald City. It was very cute. It's on Instagram. I really loved it. And they have this really great series. It's called Metro Rewind. You can actually put in your smart trip number, and you can actually see all the places you stopped, your most frequent stops, how much you saved in carbon emissions. It's really great. They even did a beautiful promotional line of T-shirts.
Whoa.
So here's actually, I would say Greenbelt had the prettiest design of all the cities that I saw. So this is the Metro Rewind. The bad news, and here's the bad news, and this is where we need to reach out to Metro and see maybe if we could get a redo. If you flip it around for the Metro Rewind side, it says Friendship Heights on the front. They put the wrong, and I checked all the other cities. So I got half of what I ordered. I got half of the shirt I ordered for Metro. Their run, unfortunately, there was some sort of printing error where they put Greenbelt on the back and Friendship Heights on the front.
Well, you could just magic marker out the Heights part.
But
so just
there's
say
this
Friendship,
beautiful, they have the
Greenbelt.
Lenore Thomas Strauss statue, the Greenbelt cinema on it. It's beautiful. If it was a complete shirt, I would encourage people to buy it. This is not an endorsement, but maybe if we could reach out to the government relations folks at WMATA and say, Greenbelters also deserve these beautiful shirts with both sides saying Greenbelt on them. And I would say West Hyattsville did not have as beautiful a shirt. Hyattsville Crossing did not have as beautiful a shirt. College Park, New Carrollton, Cheverly, we had the nicest shirt, but we're the only one that I could find where they had misprinted the front and the back says Greenbelt. So I will even pay for another shirt if it's correct. I don't mind. But I would love for Greenbelters to be able to show their Metro pride, their public transit pride correctly. But A for effort, A+ if you can get the shirt right to Metro, which last year I believe was on track for record ridership. So a lot of great things happening in transit. Would love to get a shirt to celebrate it.
Reach out to WMATA. They're great to work with. And WMATA from the top, from Randy down, they're so approachable.
Well, I've been wanting to have a work session with WMATA, not so much about ridership, but about the station itself and just the real estate people. Just in terms of looking ahead to the future. I don't know if that's something that we can set up, but it's something that I'd be interested in talking with them about. When you talk about meeting with WMATA, you can talk about service, you can talk about the trains, you can talk about the buses,
The
but,
T-shirts.
I want T-shirts. I want to talk about the real estate. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, there was just, I think related to that, we just got an email from Nick Lianos reminding people that the metro from Fort Totten to Greenbelt will be shut down this weekend with shuttle buses. So I think this
I
we
take
have some
back what I
track
said.
work.
It's,
There's some track work or station work, I'm not sure what, this weekend. So just be prepared for that.
Okay. Any other information that we need to share at this point? Well, if not, let's go ahead and close the work session. We'll be back again on Wednesday for a meeting focusing on administration, council rules, and some other discussion points. So until 7:30 on Wednesday, let's call it a night. Thank you so much.